We're not buddies.
No, never mind. Forget it. It's over. As dire as this is, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this as a podcast, sure, but we're also going to get through this as a show, too, because with as many hard-hit spots that was rough to get through, like smudges of oil on your clothings and your hair, we're going to get all the stains out, we're going to move on, and we're going to actually find ways to get through this, even with sinus headaches. All right. Well, we're covering Fear the Walking Dead 6th episode of season 6, titled Bury Her Next to Jasper's Leg. Very interesting title for a very repetitive motif show that says a lot. And I feel like we're getting to the point of which many things are happening in the twist of this season too. We're getting to the 8th episode, which is our midway point, which is nearing close to where we would normally find the twist or the turnaround. It's kind of like playing poker. You get to the river, and then all of a sudden that last card drops and everybody goes, "Ooh, I have that. I can get a flush," that sort of thing. So we're getting the hints of some things that we've actually been able to predict going forward. One of those things being sympathetic Ginny. We're starting to see a little bit of that. One of the other things that we have, I think, confirmed at this point is Death Cult. Yeah. Well, we're not still sure about Dakota. That's another thing.
I feel like we got a little bit of a clue there, though. I mean, Ginny kind of, I feel like, opened that window a little bit wider for us. Or it was a tactic.
I don't think it was yeah, well, we'll see. I honestly, you may be right. As we get into some of those specific scenes, and as Sharon D says, no sympathy for Ginny, but I will find a way to change your mind. Maybe. It's going to be terrible and hard. It's going to be terrible and hard, but It might be hard. It might be hard for Sharon D to have sympathy for Ginny, but honestly, her and I were talking before the show too, and I said, Ginny made me feel things this episode that I didn't want to feel for her. Yeah.
and then after the episode, I felt guilty
for feeling those feelings. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I felt like I was tricked. Like Ginny even tricked me into feeling sorry for her.
Well, it's not Ginny you have to sort of feel guilty about. So it's literally taking 3 or 4 steps back to kind of look at this episode and realize that the show itself, like the people running it, the people trying to make you feel certain things, that's what's going on. Now wouldn't it be meta if the show turned at the screen and goes, "Hey, it's not our fault. It's not Ginny's fault. It's Andrew and Ian. Yeah, they're doing this." It's like when the cartoons rebel against the cartoonist. It's like
yeah.
That sort of thing. But again, to say this is actually to say, hey, wow, okay, the writing here is good. Plot armor is missing, is gone. Nobody has plot armor. Everybody's susceptible. Everybody is under attack. Even the villains, which again, I like going back to, because one of the great things about Fear the Walking Dead has always been, well, I guess maybe The Walking Dead too, but Fear the Walking Dead has this way of making it seem, until Ginny came around, and Martha. Well, Martha was the worst, but when Ginny came around, we almost thought like she was like a Negan. And in a sense, she definitely is. There are some scenes where I can kind of recall where she is. We're going back to the roots where the villains are actually kind of complicated, kind of misunderstood, or there is more to them than just some sort of implacable wall. They're just the other side of where we are now. Nisa says, "I was crying afraid June would kill Ginny because I didn't want Ginny to die." Yeah. And Sharon D saying, "She's pulling the wool over your eyes," the con men parallel. So yeah, Rachel, what did you think of this episode? Or should we avoid that question? Okay.
It was heartbreaking. First, we see June unable to save Malcolm in her mobile medical truck. And, at first we think, okay, June cares about people. She's upset about losing a patient. That would be natural. But I obviously think there's a lot more going on during that. June wants to save everybody. Yes. But I think even right now, it's even more of a drive for her because she knows that she can't save John. She's doing everything she can to save other people because she can't save John. John won't let her save him because he's not being honest with her.
He's crying out for help, but not really saying what it is that he needs help with.
Exactly. Yeah. He says he needs help. He tells her in the car, you can save me by running away with me, save me from this place by coming with me. And I think she really considers it, even though she thinks about the ramifications and what actually will happen. But I think she sees that John needs help. He's desperate to get away from these people. And then when Ginny promises the hospital, June does a complete 180 and she's like, no, it's okay now. We can be safe. Well, I don't know about safe, but we can do something here. We can be useful here. Ginny's giving me what I want. She also threw in, the threat of this other unknown group, which is true. It is true, but I feel like it's another tactic to keep people close to Ginny too, and then John, he just can't stay. He can't be there.
Well, what's interesting about that, hold your tears for one moment, because what we find out in the last episode, do you remember when we felt like we couldn't quite connect with Sherry and Dwight? I think most people in some ways could not connect with Sherry and Dwight for whatever reason. We can drill down on that, but essentially it could be even just the fact that most fearheads don't really have that prior connection. We sort of do, and sometimes we find ourselves saying, even though I know what happens in The Walking Dead, I never really could connect with Sherry and Dwight because, for instance, Dwight did stupid, heinous things to Daryl, to Denise. To a bunch of other people, which prevents us from maybe going to that bridge. And we do feel something. We do want them to be happy. There is something about that, like wanting a resolution, knowing that Dwight was crushed. But for some reason, with as little as we know in some ways about John and June, we still feel something for them because in some ways, like we've said before, like John has less baggage, and yet June has much. And so those two together, there's a like, oh, I have what you need. I have the ability to save you. You have the ability to save me. And they're not tainted by some other baggage. And they still aren't. But at the same time, now we're starting to see that. And it's coming from an outside external force. But moving back, one of the things that we said about Sherry and Dwight is that Sherry needs to find her own way. What Morgan says in the prior episode. The only reason why I am not in any way upset about John moving on to the right while they go to the left trying to find a new place for this hospital is that part of me is kind of like, John needs to find his way out of this. And we've seen, and it's something to kind of note, we've seen John in this place before. When he and Strand are stranded behind a flooded river, etc., and they can't really bust through, and they have all these different natural resources that prevent him from getting out. We see John lose hope, and we see June swoop in and, cover for him. And then sometimes, John will turn it around, cover for her, and boost her spirits up and stuff like that. But we've seen John lose hope. We may not have recognized it at the time or written it off, but there's been multiple times where John feels like he's losing hope. Even in season 5 last year, when he sort of feels like he's giving up. They're not going to be able to do what they need to do out there. June is the one to kind of rally him, and we see this over and over again. And so I think trying the same thing over and over again for John and expecting a different result, we can't always rely on the people that we love to save us from a certain situation. And so I think John finding out on his own, trying to maybe be a complete super John Dory 3, which June, I think, in this episode becomes that in ways that we never really expected. John has to find his own way to find that level of competence, because I don't even think John's reached super John, in some ways.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, in some ways, I think he's been stunted. And talk about Morgan, which, by the way, Morgan doesn't feature once in this episode.
That didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah. But there's a reason.
We usually start and end Morgan.
Yeah, start and end, or there's some sort of thread of Morgan throughout a given episode, but there isn't at all. But there's a reason for that. One of the things that Morgan says in the last episode is that I was so insistent, and I'm going to paraphrase, I was so insistent in doing things my way that I didn't really see that I needed to adapt. I needed to be flexible, I was always stuck on doing things a certain way that I didn't see a way to change and move forward and adapt. One of the biggest things about surviving an apocalypse is the adaptation, right? And so why that's important and why Morgan doesn't feature is that right on the heels of him saying that is an episode that features Ginny a little, more or less. Really half the episode is Ginny and half the episode is essentially June. And what you start to notice is that Ginny has to do things a specific way, not let everybody know her plan, kind of like Morgan. I mean, where Morgan does tell people what he's about, but tells people, you'll figure it out, you'll redirect, you'll find another way. But Ginny has her own plan, doesn't really let people in on it, doesn't really change from this path how she saves the people or protects the people under her auspices, that sort of thing. And it's this weird, dark reflection of Morgan, who he was in season 5, that we're not doing careful, we're doing right, which is why you don't really even need Morgan in this episode. You don't really need old Morgan. Sharondy and Nisa are kind of going through this, Sharondy saying June thinks Ginny's going to honor her promises. Nisa says maybe she will. Sharondy's also saying, I always expected something bad to happen with John and June, but I never questioned their relationship. That's why the internal breakdown is so gutting. In season 4, he was stranded with Strand and he lost hope. Yeah, that's what I was saying before. It's roughly the same time as the Dwight Sherry episode because I think Terry, the driver John replaces, is Ranger driver guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
that
interesting. Yeah.
I never said his name in Honey.
Right. When we see Paige, the woman who's running away from Ginny and her Rangers, the first thing I noticed was like how oddly close in demeanor she was to Sarah.
Appearance.
Too. Did you feel that?
And I both thought instantly that it was Sarah trucking through the woods. And then when we saw her face, I'm like, oh, not Sarah. But they wanted us to think it was.
Or at least feel like this was the Sarah type character. You know, talk about dark mirror reflections.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and like Charity's saying is that, I thought it was Sarah at first. I was so scared thinking it was her. Nisa says, good, because we're all thinking the same thing. That's what the show is designing us to feel like this is a Sarah type character. Oh, and another thing that was kind of odd was that when Ginny starts to mention the mill, we all had did we all have a little jump? Like, oh, whoa, there are people manning the denim factory that they used to be in, maybe? Did you think that?
Oh, no, I didn't. I assumed they were in the forest and she was talking about like trapping trees down. I assumed it was like a lumber mill.
Right. Well, I mean, yes, we eventually find that out. But like when they said, oh, you're manning them, after we buried Jasper's leg or whatever. And I was like, oh, there are people manning the mill, the denim factory, with the place where they used to stay. Would they say, is anybody out there? Blah. Yeah, nobody. Okay, sure. And then obviously they straightened it out, but whatever. But I mean, again, like, the reason why I mentioned that is because of like, okay, we thought that was Sarah. Okay, not. Okay, we thought that was the denim factory. Okay, it's not. But like, they're trying to, this is the thing. It definitely isn't. But what they're trying to evoke are these feelings of who these people are. Of course, a person that resembles Sarah. Okay, we're going to see Sarah soon. And they're trying to like boot up our computers to think about who Sarah was. They're also trying to boot up our computers to remember season 5 as well. Like, okay, they were out there. They were trying to help people. They really couldn't manage it. And yet, when we move on to the next scene, just to kind of jump ahead and then maybe I'll jump back. But what's the first thing that we hear in contrast to season 5? And it wasn't even the beginning of season 5 where we heard this. We had a couple of episodes in before we jumped back to like a flashback of them at the mill. Logan eventually driving up post-flashback of them trying to get people to help and they couldn't reach anybody. But the first thing that we hear once we get into the truck, or the camera gets into the truck, is all these cries for help, which is a stark contrast to the mill that we know, the denim factory from the last season, which I thought was very, very interesting. Now it's all of a sudden everybody's calling for help instead of them trying to find people who need help. So now that's important moving forward, because that basically influences every decision June makes in this episode. How desperate they were to help people and how now they're in an opportunity to help many people. And so let's hold that there. Let's go back to the bullfrog bullshit. Obnoxious Ginny is obnoxious, but the only thing I wrote about it really was that her thing rhymed. I was about to bury the frog. He sucked his stomach right back up into his mouth, hopped away like it was any other day. Turns out some frogs vomit up things they'd rather not eat in a most peculiar way. And I thought, okay, show, I see you. The thing that I might have gotten out of Ginny's story, because the show doesn't say anything by accident, is that, and this is what I wrote, you tell me what you think, but the essence of the story is that the bullfrog, she thought the bullfrog was dead when she was a kid, and turns out the frogs spit up some things they don't eat in the most peculiar way. And she says to Paige, dum-dum, sometimes you think something's dead when it's not. And this comes up a lot in the episode. She tells sometimes it's best to know to take out some dogs to pasture. And, so she's really countermanding her own words. And then yet she needs to know that she's not disposable later on in the episode. But there's something deeper going on here. And for some people, that's really true. And I wrote in big, bold letters, sometimes the past isn't dead. And also because Ginny dies doesn't mean the ideas die with her also. It doesn't eliminate all the threats. This is going to come back. And so when I say the past is dead, like, okay, so you think about the bullfrog, you also think sort of, kind of, by the end of the episode, John. You know, for John, it's not over for him. His past is not dead. And with every single character, we notice that they need to let the past die in order to move forward, you know, in some way, in some meaningful way. And for John, it's just taking a little longer. But also for Ginny, in some ways, I feel like we're starting to see that in some weird, freakish way, Ginny is going through the same things that our gang is going through. As much as we don't care for her,
yeah,
there is something going on there where she's being, you know, she's kind of playing catch up as well. She's seeing herself, finding herself rubbing against her own ethos and finding out that we can't keep doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. And also, there's a very important question by the end of the episode, and this is something I ask you guys. Let's say June let Ginny die. Do you think it would have been over?
No, absolutely. Like you just said, the ideas are not going to die with Ginny. I mean, Hill and Marcus are right there. I think either one of them would have been glad to step into leadership role.
Yeah,
and continue whatever vision was.
Yeah, and even considering the threat too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if Ginny's gone, that threat is still out there. That just because she's gone doesn't mean the threat is.
Right. Now, do you think it would have been more effective? They would have been more effective to take out that threat without Ginny or with Ginny? That's another thing too, and it's a hard question. I don't blame you for not answering.
It is a hard question to answer because we know just as much about this death cult as anybody. I mean, it seemed like Ginny might know more than what she's letting on, but we really have no information about this group. So I don't know. I've always said knowledge is power. So if Ginny really does have knowledge of this group, I think it would be beneficial to keep her around and use the information she has.
And the ability to wrangle all the rangers and to gather resources. And I mean,
But she's also smart enough to convince June that she knows enough to keep herself alive. I think that for me, the bullfrog story was all about this scene.
Yeah.
Ginny was vomiting up what she needed to stay alive.
That's a very interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Sharon and I were discussing it beforehand, and I think her and I kind of landed on the same idea here that, you know, Ginny's the bullfrog here.
That goes both ways though. So to say the quote precisely, it turns out some frogs vomit up things they'd rather not eat. So, which assumes that maybe Ginny's been doing all this and it's been hurting her the entire time too. Like, okay, the bullfrog has to vomit up things in a very peculiar way because it cannot handle what it's trying to dish, you know, what it's trying to intake, you know? The bullfrog is trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So eventually it has to vomit out its stomach. So, and that's her vomiting out her stomach.
Yeah. And Charity saying, you know, and now she'll suck it back in and hop away as if it's just another day. You know, this conversation that her and June had was just between the two of them. So it's really, you know, she said scenario.
Yeah, maybe. But then, but Ginny is one less hand though. So it's not like,
but she's a left, so it's okay.
Wait, is she though?
She is a lefty, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Well, you see her shooting the walkers with her left hand. So.
Okay. Well, but yeah, she is one less hand though. So even if it isn't her dominant hand, it's like it's not as if she could walk away as though it's any other day. Which there's the irony, I think, a little bit. You know, she can't, and you even see her a little bit change, like by the end of it too, as she's driving away. Before she's driving away,
I wanted to see that too. I really did, but
you didn't.
No, I did. Oh. I definitely saw that on her face. I just don't know yet if I believe it. I don't know. What she says about Dakota and just needing to hear her voice, honestly, that was the moment that Ginny got me to cry. I thought this is a real human moment. You almost just died. Of course, the first thing you want to hear is a loved one's voice, you know, even if she is a little psycho Nisa, which I'm still on board with. I mean, the comment that she says to June, I think she says it to get June on her side, but I think there might be a little bit of truth to it when she's when she says, I love her, or I did love her.
Well, that I think was more her resigning herself to dying.
Sort of coming to grips with her death. I thought the same thing too at first, but then the second and third time I watched it, I thought, maybe it's not about her about to die. I mean, maybe we've been saying all along Dakota's not right, you know, and maybe Ginny's feelings for her are now just about protection and not so much love anymore, which I don't know. That's hard to wrap my head around. But the second and third time I watched it, I didn't feel like Ginny was accepting her death when she said that. When she said, I did love her, you know, and then she says to June, you don't know what it's like to love someone so much and not be able to help them. One, Sharon, you pointed this out to me during our conversation. She said that to June specifically because she knows damn well June does know what that feels like. And saying that to June is going to get June to sympathize with Ginny and what's going on. So she draws a connection to John. She brings in the connection that she has to Dakota, and all of a sudden June sees her as a human. And I think that saved her life.
So you think Ginny knew that she was, God, I'm having a hard time. It's hard because I think
Ginny was doing everything she could to convince June to save her.
Well, yes, for sure. And maybe I'm not looking past the surface. That is entirely possible, because I like what you're saying. Because I mean, the way I took it was more like, you know, if it's not me, then who is it going to be? And I felt like, in a way, Ginny was kind of like handing the torch to her and saying, I know you want to save people. I know that's what you do. I know. And I'm going to drill down on this further before I move back to this point. One of the big things that I noticed in this episode is that June's thing is taking what we learned in season 5 about all of these people trying to help people. And I feel like at first, the thing about Ginny that we find out by the end of Malcolm dying is that, you know, they've been running 29 hours. They've been on no sleep. They move everywhere to try to help people. And yet they always get there too little too late. What I realized by the end of this episode, and then watching it again, that was by design also. She did the same thing to June as she did to John. The illusion of being able to help people when meanwhile, or like, yeah, maybe they help people now and again, maybe they finally get to them. We confirm this by the end of the episode as they're having this back and forth with June's axe on Ginny's neck. Ginny's trying to convince June to save her while June is giving directions on taking the shrapnel out of Wes's stomach, right? And then by the end of it, the first thing that comes about is that Wes is okay. And then June eventually saves Ginny. But what Ginny says just before that, she says, looks like you finally got to help someone, which means that Ginny was less concerned about helping people as she was wanting June to spin her wheels to break her spirit. What's weird about the end of her statement is that, in a weird way, I feel like it was her saying, looks like you bested me, in a weird way. You moved past what I wanted to accomplish with you. And in a way, that is a reflection of what's going on as well. Because by the end of it, I feel like June has gained some sort of mastery over Ginny. Like she has something over Ginny that nobody has ever gotten to have, essentially. Maybe some sort of weird leadership. Because by the end of it, after she chops her hand off, she goes, we should talk.
Yeah, I just have such a hard time believing anything Ginny says. You know what I mean? She does say we should talk, but she doesn't start talking. Like, what are you waiting for? Spill your guts. You know, if you have something to say it. Don't schedule a time to talk about it later. Say it, don't spray it. Sorry. I have to break out of that for a second. Because she was doing a lot of that earlier. Like, when she was yelling, she was like, it's like yelling at everybody. I'm going to talk to her, whether you like it or not. And then everybody dies. I don't care. But yeah, sorry. But you're right. Well, and then but I feel like she's been through a lot. So sure. I don't blame her. Yeah. She looks very groggy. Yeah. I mean, Ginny definitely went through some shit this episode too. Definitely. We've always said, you know, don't underestimate Ginny. I think she knows exactly how to take advantage of a situation. If she sees an opportunity, she's gonna do it. You know what I mean? And I think she saw that. I don't know. You know, Luciana even says when June gets back on the truck and says, they all do. Yeah, we got the hospital. And Lucy's like, why would you even think that? Like, why would you believe her? Right. Why do you believe her? And I kind of thought the same thing. Why do you believe her? Until like Wendell shows up. And then you're like, maybe. Yes, I don't know about you. I don't, maybe. Okay, first of all, I cried my face off when Wendell showed up. And because Sarah was setting me off. Yeah, Sarah's reaction, like, oh, okay, we're just going to breeze right past that. I just dried up. Let's keep it this way. But we also know Ginny doesn't often reward people. I mean, she rewarded John in the same way. So can we really trust she's bringing Wendell back? Wait, when you said reward, you said in quotes, right? Reward? I did, yep. Yes, okay. Yes. I can always tell from the sound of your voice. when I'm using quote fingers. Yeah. So, bringing Wendell back could just be a further tactic. I feel like everything Ginny does, Ginny's like a Walking Dead writer. She doesn't do anything by accident.
Yeah. Although, what's interesting about what happens here is that not only does she get the hospital, she basically can ask for anything, it feels like, June, of Ginny. Because maybe... Yeah, well, not just that. In a way, they have a mutual understanding. This weird, you are now on par with me. This is what I was getting at before, is that you and me just went through something. You had no reason to spare my life. You had none whatsoever. And yet, the thing of it is that it's not as if you need me. You could, it's almost as if Ginny said, it's not as if you need me. I am just asking you this to take care of Dakota. You are strong enough. I've seen you. You stood up to me. You know what's what. You care about people, but you are smart enough to know that you will get to the bottom of something if it comes down to between you and John, let's say even. You don't need me anymore. You could run this whole fucking place. This is the impression that I got by the end of it, is that June could run this thing. And yet she spares her life because ultimately what June really wants is not the power. She wanted what she wanted to do back then. A, she wanted to stop running for once in her goddamn life. Instead of the solution being running away, she wants to stay. And B, she wants to help people. She wants to feel like she's making a difference this time around. Something that she felt like she was starting to get at the Diamond. And eventually that got taken away from her.
Do you know what I just thought of?
What?
Just when you're talking about, how Ginny and June have gone through some stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that sound? That sounds like Brothers in Arms, right? We were just talking about that on World Beyond.
And Marines? Yeah.
And Marines. And this bond that soldiers go through when they have an experience like this, much like what Ginny and June just went through. So maybe there is a little mutual respect after that. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm willing to say.
Well, yeah. Again, all of this is maybe. But
right.
At the same token, all of these are impressions. These are the things that imprint on you. What it means later on, we don't know, but these are impressions. Let me just say something Sharon just said. June did what she thought was right, though it cost her everything, much like John was willing to give up everything to do what she thought was right, what he thought was right. And that's very interesting. So I want to drill on that a little bit more. When we see June at first, in the collapsed shack, bunker, whatever, the first thing June does is basically run away from Ginny, basically going directly against her ethos of helping people. This must have been very, very, very difficult for June. You don't know what it's like to not be able to help someone, that sort of thing. She has her husband in her head. She has Malcolm in her head. She has all these other people she's trying to help, Wes, and all these other people who she saw turn, I think, right, in the back of the truck. Yes, she just saw them turn. She just put a couple of those people down. That must be frustrating. And then she turns around on Ginny and goes, this is your fault. You made this happen. Instead of just letting me treat these people, and so now she's not facing off against Ginny. She's facing off against herself. She's going against her own ethos, and saying, fuck policy and procedure. This is the way. But what's interesting about what ends up winning the day is she does not do what John does. What I mean by that is that John has to run away from his principles. John is the fighter. John is the person who sticks around Morgan, the Clarks, to help them out through this thing. Althea, let's say, to help them out, even though he has another mission. He always stuck around. He tried to rally Strand, when they were stranded at wherever it was, the flooded river or whatever, with the alligator. He did his best. And it cost him, at his own personal cost. Now he's acting against his ethos. He needs to take care of himself. Keep in mind, what I'm not saying is this is wrong. Also, John needed to think of himself a long time ago in a weird way. John was initially trying to do that at first, thinking mistakenly, I need to leave society because I need to punish myself. And then he goes out into the world again, helps Morgan, helps Althea, helps the Clarks, eventually Nick, etc. And then, does his best. And then finally, for once, he has to kind of think of himself. And I think that that's the right thing to do, to be honest. And June is finally, instead of thinking of herself, running away, taking care of herself, taking herself out of society, just like John used to do. Now she's staying. So there's a bit of a Dwight and Sherry situation going on here where one is chasing, one is following, and now one is running away and the other is not following. The road forks a little bit. But do not give up hope, because sometimes, like we all say, cliche as it is, sometimes you have to let someone free in order for them to actually find their own way back. Because the only way John is going to come around at all is if he goes off on his own and finds an interesting possibility up ahead. Now, what's interesting about him leaving in this manner is that he can bump into anybody at this point, and the story can become this weird, rich tangent of a factor that could come back in an interesting way. He could meet Strand. He could meet Alicia. He could meet the end as the beginning guys. So there's a bunch of things that can happen as a result of this. It kind of actually, and I didn't want to say this last night, Sharon D, because we both watched the episode at the same time last night, or this morning. And when we came back around, you were upset as all hell. And I held back from saying this because I hope that means I'm a good friend. But I was a little giddy about the possibilities of what John could run into. Because it's not as if John is like falling apart. John just needed to get out. Yeah. And what happens after that? John may be able to handle whatever comes his way now. Because now he knows what way is up. As long as he's out of that situation, he'll know which way is up. Okay, I'm doing things on my terms again. Let me reset, get back to what I know is right and wrong out here in the wild, wild west, and maybe he could find his way. Oh, that's very interesting.
I like what Nisa just said.
Sharon says Ginny thought she was earning June's trust, but maybe June was really earning Ginny's. Or both. She was also saying, we're going to get a mirror. June will be chasing John instead of the other way around. Okay, so yeah, we're on the same footing here. And then Nisa says it would be ironic if John finds Sherry.
Well, John knows the idea of Sherry. I mean, he knows she exists.
He was the one who found the letter.
Right, he wouldn't recognize her. But if she said, I'm Sherry, Dwight's wife, he'd be like, oh, okay, I know you.
Well, even if he said Sherry, though, too, by the way, he would probably guess it. Yeah.
True. That would be an interesting group for John Dory to wind up with.
Oh, maybe.
And they're against Ginny. So
right, that could be bad.
Could be a good thing.
It could be a good or bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, John's smart, and he's been inside. Well, they all have, right? Because they're all Ginny's outcasts. So I guess they all have an idea of who Ginny is, what she's capable of.
Oh my God. What would John's mask look like if he did join these people? Would it have a mustache? Because I'm interested.
I don't know why. I just pictured one of those like 1980s like plastic pullover masks, but it's Woody the cowboy.
There's a snake in my boots. Sharon also brings up another point. It's not like one of them is dead. The rift in the Dory relationship is just crushing. John would do it, but see, here's the thing. So this is why I think John finding the mannequin mask people, Virginia's outcasts, it makes complete sense, but it also makes things very complicated. Because if John doesn't really find his way and then focuses on revenge, that could be very bad for everybody. Like, it's very good for John in a weird way, finding his place, knowing what way is up, but that could make John face off squarely against June in a weird way. That makes me worried. Like, it's nice to see John, making friends again, but
I think if John did move forward with Jenny's outcasts before they did anything, I think John would figure out a way to pull June out and keep her out of danger. If they did come up with some sort of plan that they thought could take Ginny and the other Rangers out or whatever, I think John would pull June out and make sure she was safe first.
But wouldn't that be okay, so there's a couple things that buck against some of that idea is that, one, they're not very amenable to plans and planning. They're like, as long as we have the firepower, let's just go after Ginny.
John could help with that, though. John could help with the planning.
Maybe. But the only other thing that goes against that, and this is the bigger point actually, is that maybe we're focusing on the wrong people. Because just like we said, if we're focusing on taking Ginny out, we're not focusing on this death cult, the end is the beginning people. Because when the death cult is done with Virginia, they'll just move on like they did with the office dwellers, giving them all the plague. Basically they're going after every single living settlement and trying to end them. So it would not stop there. These people would be next, these outcasts. And so if you take out Ginny, they're just going to go after you. And so why not join, kind of like the other thing that I said, is they are going to maybe end up joining forces. This is something I wanted to touch on beforehand, because one of the things is that even though these the end is the beginning guys don't know about Ginny and don't care, they just want any attempt to survive this moment to end. Ginny knows about them, which I think is interesting. I think the whole point of Dwight and Sherry being out there is because she knows about them and needs to document what they are trying to do. This is why June is saying to her constantly, what do you know? I need to know what you know. And that's that's why we're trying to figure out also, like, okay, so Ginny knows about them, which is why she's putting all these people in harm's way, or at least Dwight and Althea. She knows they exist,
Yep.
even though they don't know Ginny exists, but on purpose, it looks like.
Yep. And Paige's demonstration at the beginning shows, I think that's what leads her to make the comment to June about not dealing with just some other ragtag group of, miscreants or whatever she calls them. Paige was willing to die instead of answering these questions. That says something.
That's the defining feature too, which means, Wes illustrating that he does not want to die should be an indicator,
Right. Yeah. I don't think Wes is affiliated. I don't think so. Did you think that?
No, not at all.
We know he loves to paint, so
yeah. Although not spray paint, so that's interesting, right? I mean,
the that was in there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like, what do you believe? Do we not know what to believe? I'm not saying I'm discounting Wes, but the show does have a funny way of maybe automatically dismissing. I mean, I love that she brings up Derek. There is something interesting. Maybe that is weird. Do you think they might be bringing up my theory again? Like Wes is Derek?
Yeah.
I wonder.
I still think that could still play out, big revelation, finding out who Wes/Derek really is.
One of the things we did find out is that Derek did teach Wes how to paint, which I thought was very interesting. Because I know that Derek had started with the tree, I think, it sounds like. And that was the first tree, possibly. The one that we commented on didn't look quite the way the others did last year.
Oh, yeah.
When they found the original, it looked more simple. If you're reading this, you're still here. That's what the tree said.
Yeah, the first wonky one.
Charity was saying, that's exactly why Morgan didn't want Dwight and Sherry to attack. Oh, hey, don't worry about the Iron Throne when the dead are marching in Westeros, So Morgan needs to figure out what's going on with this death cult. He also needs to figure out, how to get these people out of harm's way. That's another thing. And Sharondy's saying, June is going to be like Strand, get a gold key and be Ginny's right hand. Well, see, I don't think June is going to be a ranger, though. But she may be the hand of the queen or the king, whatever you want to call it. Anissa's saying it is a death cult. And no, Wes is definitely not with them. And Sharondy says, I think Ginny is starting to panic. And Anissa's saying, there's a death cult trying to end the settlements. I'd panic, too. And she goes, oops, I'm defending Ginny. Sorry. But Sharondy says something interesting is that I also want to point out that June was extremely tired, hadn't slept much, basically 29 hours.
Okay.
Much like John in the Key, that's right, with his toothache. And that could have also affected her decision-making skills. Couple that with the adrenaline, and you've got June taking Ginny's word, right? Mm-hmm. That is a good point. I do want to say that it does put things into perspective. I think the 29 hours has affected her in two ways, and that's one is it may have clouded her judgment, sure, with taking Ginny at her word, but also I think it made it possible for her to not help someone who needed help, too. May have made her want to not help rather than to help in some ways. So it's reflexive. Bad decision-making isn't limited to just taking Ginny at her word. It could also be like going against her own ethos, that sort of thing. So I don't know. But I think this isn't more of a partnership as it is a mutual understanding, though. The interesting thing that June says to Luciana, to Sarah, to Wendell, who happens to be sort of nearby, Wes, who's lying down next to them, is that we get to do things our way, on our terms. So this isn't a partnership. This isn't a friendship, a skipping in the street kind of thing, going arm in arm sort of thing. It's like, nope, we're independent from you. We have a mutual understanding. Let's keep people safe. One thing that is hammered over and over again is that June wants to keep people safe, healthy, healed, recovered, and Ginny wants to do the same thing. We want the same thing, Ginny says in this episode, back and forth. As much as we do not like Ginny, there are some things that are true that Ginny wants. Remember what your reaction to Ginny possibly having babies in her camp and in her auspices and people having children and stuff like that? Your reaction was like, ugh, no, that's not what she'd want. It's like, no, that's definitely what she wants. Well, even though it doesn't sound like it.
Right. You need children, for the future. Otherwise, what are you building this place for? No, I understand that. But like Ginny herself having kids or being involved with the child or childcare, I don't see that happening.
Right. But I do want to hammer on something that you said, before, is that maybe it wasn't just about protecting Dakota. Maybe there's something more going on here. It's like you said, I loved her, or maybe that's her admitting to herself that she used to love her until Dakota became something else.
Right. I think it was, I'd have to scroll way back up in the things, but somebody had said, maybe at one point she did love her, but now it's not so much about loving her as it is just protecting her out of, I don't know, familial necessity. Maybe she
Right,
just feels an
obligation.
obligation
Right.
to protect her.
Yeah, one of you guys said it in the chat, but it is something that I was thinking of too. But it was a combination of you guys saying in the chat and then the way you said it earlier. It could also mean that just like what June is feeling right now, not knowing how to help John, is the same way she's feeling about Dakota. Like, meaning it's more than just keeping her safe and alive. It is not knowing what she is going through, or knowing exactly what she is going through, but not unwilling to change her tactics. Let's take Dakota at her word for just a second. As much as we don't want to, or we have our theories about her and all that. What makes things a little difficult to understand about Virginia is that maybe she's on a collision course just like Morgan is. It's like she cannot stop and swerve the car away enough to move out of the way of danger. Meaning, Dakota does not see eye to eye with Ginny, and it may end up harming their relationship, and Ginny just cannot see which way is up in their relationship. As smart as Ginny is, which is very interesting, there is some true axiom to the fact that sometimes you cannot heal the healer. And as much as you can manipulate the other pieces on the board, in some ways, Ginny cannot manipulate or will not manipulate Dakota, refuses maybe to manipulate Dakota in the way that she does other people. And she cannot help Dakota, and she cannot stop herself. And the very thing that Dakota probably does want from Ginny is to stop. And she cannot stop because it goes against what she wants for Dakota, which is to be safe. Yeah. So how do you help that? How? How does Ginny square the circle, right? Does she know any other way? Does she have to become Morgan? 16 different somebodies. But how does she break away from that? Does Dakota have to die for her to realize that? Like Dwayne and Jenny? Ugh. Shouldn't have to though, right?
Right. I hope not.
So how do you break Ginny out of that loop, Or is she putting everybody in the same loop that she's in a weird way? That's weird.
Dakota might have to break out and find her own way.
Maybe. Well, maybe that's the only way. But if that's the case, what does Ginny become, right? And so that's even worse. An untethered Ginny, not tied to Dakota, like her little check in balance. And that's interesting. So Blasey hits on something really hard here. I don't think she should have killed her, but she should have let her die. This is talking about June and Ginny. That's what Strand said too. Strand says they needed to make their own decisions too. Now, this was about the hospital. We needed to call the shots. That's what she means about Strand. Yeah. Wow. Lisa's saying Ginny wants to help her and she loved her. Dakota is wrong in the head. But maybe it could be closer to what I'm talking about. And this would be the irony in Ginny, is that she cannot break out of the loop of wanting to protect Dakota, but protecting Dakota in Ginny's eyes means I have to do things that I don't like, much like Strand. I may not be able to look Dakota in the eye in order to keep her safe. There's irony in that.
There is. All right, we don't really know Ginny on an emotional side just yet, but have you seen anything so far that you believe Ginny regrets doing?
Oh man.
She seems pretty confident in most of her choices so far. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I haven't seen evidence of Ginny doing something that maybe she wouldn't normally do just to protect Dakota. I see her more using these situations to her advantage.
That's interesting that you say that. I'm going to use an example that you pulled up back in the key. So in the key, you mentioned something very interesting, and that was when John shot her the look, it looked as though Ginny was actually really, really remorseful over Cameron's death during the funeral. Mm-hmm. Okay, but wait, take that. Let's move it even further back into the past. Do you remember what I said about that feeling that Ginny must have gotten when she was trying to shoot Morgan? And there's almost relief/horror when the gun didn't actually fire and kill Morgan, like that point blank range when Morgan was already shot to put him out of his misery. That like, and then Morgan just yelling out in kind of like this frustration, like, don't die, like that sort of thing. But that horror, that first of all, the simultaneous horror of being hit by Morgan in the face, but also like not being able to kill him when she's standing right over him with the gun. This is something Ginny has never had to do in person before. In some senses, what I felt was her killing Morgan, or possibly killing Morgan, was the first life she'd ever taken.
Yeah, I thought I remembered we had talked about that was probably the first living person she had tried to kill.
And what's really funny about that is that as you go through the season, you see people doing things that they don't normally do, or you wouldn't expect them to do. From Strand to Dwight to Sherry to Althea holding back, and now June for 1 second not offering assistance to somebody who needed it, and then suddenly offering assistance and taking taking control of her situation and not running away. A lot of things that June doesn't do that she normally may have done in the past. Let's go, now that we go back into the past and see what Ginny is forcing herself to do in order to keep her thing in line, killing somebody for the first time. And then you find out all this is for Dakota, to keep Dakota safe. And that's interesting to me. She is in some ways going through her own evolution, or what she feels she needs to do in order to get this thing accomplished. So I'm not saying, well, first of all, let me take the oath right here, is that I'm not sympathizing with her. I'm just trying to understand what's going on. You know, if I understand what's going on, I can cope, you know?
Yeah, it's easier to deal with. I could see Ginny starting this mission out as a way to protect Ginny or Dakota,
right.
But I think over time, as this thing grew bigger, she got power, she was the leader, and I think she started to enjoy that. So maybe it started out as protecting Dakota, but I think it's morphed into something else for her.
Right. Well, which is a perfect comparison for Negan. You know, and Carl confronting Negan at the gates of Alexandria, going, "When did this get away from you?"
Yes. Yeah.
But and similarly to maybe Morgan saying to Rick at the bar just after they killed shitty Jared and all those savior runaways from the hilltop, you know, what made you stay? What made you not kill everybody? And he goes, yeah, I had my boy. And Morgan goes, yeah, I know what that is. But here's the thing, Ginny still has Dakota. So, and I think there is some truth to what you're saying about maybe it did get away from her, or maybe she thought she had to do more. And let's keep her in more of a protective egg so that she doesn't break, so that the Fabergé egg doesn't break, meaning her.
Yeah.
So, you know, and sometimes people will do that. You know, this brings me to the ultimate question that I actually wrote down. This is going to make you all hate me. Just like Dwight says to Morgan about, if Grace asked you to do this, you would too. Would you, perhaps, for your loved one, go do what Ginny does to keep them safe?
Well, of course. I don't even have to think about it. I would do anything to keep my loved one safe. Anything.
Right.
Anything.
Right. There you go. Well, I want to kind of bring this over to these guys too, because you aren't as hesitant as these guys, probably. Which I find interesting. I love that. You do this thing where you answer first and explain later. Meaning, I know the answer right away, but then it might take me a little while to explain exactly why, but then you're 100% sure.
Right after June gives Wes the pain medication, Ginny has a little freak out. And I thought I could hear like desperation in her voice. Like I thought I heard real emotion there from Ginny.
Right.
Like a panic, you know, somebody just said she's in a panic. That was definitely what I heard, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely what I heard too. Sharon says, but keeping the settlements safe for Dakota became her driving force, just like saving people became June's driving force. Again, they're in sync. They do get it. Sharon continues, when Ginny leaves, June just lets out this frustrated scream. Right, with June giving the medication to Wes. Ginny does the scream. So you were right. And yeah, Nisa's saying she's just afraid of the cult people. She is, yes, and primarily, sure, afraid of them getting to Dakota, threatening this bubble. She wants to keep Dakota in to keep her safe. But then also, I have to imagine that in some respect, maybe some, she does want to keep these people safe. Maybe in as much to protect Dakota. Let's go there and say that could be all it's about. But then also, there has to be some semblance of humanity. Like, I feel like in some senses, you cannot strip Ginny down to just those bare attacks alone. You know, was this all just to protect Dakota? Nisa says, I was thinking Ginny was trying to protect Dakota from anyone because the cult people are infiltrated in the settlements. Interesting. Yes. And maybe because she knows Dakota would go to their side too. Just like I said, I wish I never said it. So she's desperate to find these people. She's all about the future. The cult is about the end. She's too protecting everyone, which is what I was afraid of, possibly being the case, which is very, very attractive to young people for some reason, the end. Have you noticed that young people are all about this weird, I'm voting for big meteor for 2020 to take us all out. It's like, why are you young people talking about the end as if you know?
Because they haven't lived enough life to enjoy it yet.
Yeah. Or to know how precious life is to be ripped from you.
I want to go back to what Nisa had said about the death cult infiltrating the settlements, because I had thought the same thing when that walker with the razor blades on her hands attacks June. My first thought was, oh man, that's genius, right? Somebody put that on her hands. And then I thought, maybe she did it. Like, what if this walker put razor blades on her hands and then killed herself?
Yeah.
Knowing she would come back and attack.
Exactly. Yeah. cut her own throat, which is, wow, levels of commitment.
Right. As long as you don't kill the brain, you're going to come back. So
yeah,
she could
exactly.
have killed herself.
Yeah, and if she really cut deeply on the vocal cords, yeah, nobody will hear it coming. Silent but deadly, as they say. But furthermore, and John confirms this, he says, yeah, there's no activity up top, as far as I can tell. There's nothing broke through the fences up top. So whatever it was a threat from within. This John hammers that home. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
That walker could have been the razor blade walker could have been the one that spray painted the oil tower.
I think that was the refined fuel. So after the fuel gets cooked, it goes into a holding place for it to go into tankers and jerry cans and all that stuff. That's where and that's where that's where they tagged on the refined fuel area. Yeah. So
So I was thinking this walker with the razor blade walker was probably the one that did the spray painting, taped some razor blades to her hands, and then killed herself.
Oh, you're limiting yourself. I think there's more than one. Yes, you might be right. Maybe there's the one, but
I mean, throughout all the settlements, I think there's more than just one. But she might have been, the tank town sleeper.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. That is very interesting. These people are probably willing to make the long haul to end these settlements, much like who from The Walking Dead. You're gonna say it, or am I? Who are the ones begging for the end, mostly by the end of it?
Oh, I mean the Whisperers.
Yeah, who also had sleepers.
Yeah,
we were just talking about him yesterday, the last time. Yeah. Dante,
absolutely, Dante. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, Mary / Gamma.
Sure.
So there's a commitment to this idea of the end, And Nissa's saying, oh, she's part of the death cult, Dakota. It's 100% possible that they're not afraid to die. It's the biggest threat to the settlements and sabotage the oil fields, Sharon says. Right. Nissa says, if Ginny tells June all she knows, June will trust Ginny on this. And Sharon says, apocalypse suicide bombers. Yeah, well, Dante, Nissa says Dante Origins. He's the leader of the cult.
This is several years prior, isn't it?
It does check out, maybe. Oh, that would be wild. That would be wild. Dante is the mortician's son, Sharon D says. Oh my God, we're digging in holes, going deep.
Yeah. Oh man, is the mortician's son.
Oh my God, Nissa's going crazy. Dante is the mortician's son. That's it. Which means Dante survives people. So that is complicated. Dante survives enough to head to the Whisperers and fall in love with their death cult. Yeah, this makes a lot more sense. At least in this one, we survive, and we just serve the.
Pretend to be dead.
Yeah, that's a way better ethos than mine is. The mortician's son. Also, heartbreaking to see the CNL trucking. So the CNL truck being bastardized. So but being bastardized by the green cross and the key down the middle. Ooh, that one hit a chord. Mm-hmm. He says, I haven't made notes, too busy crying. Oh, yeah, we can talk about the title card for a second. Which was interesting to me because talk about misdirects. I'm hoping you guys felt the same for some weird reason. When the title card first started and it first started zooming out, the shape of June's silhouette for a second, just in the beginning when you see that pinhole of just that head and as it expands out, I'm like, wait, is this Grace? It's weird. It looked big, so the way her jacket,
okay. Like a larger jacket.
Grace? And then all of a sudden you saw it was June and it was just like, oh, okay, all right. I got panicked a little. It was really weird. Yeah, so she said it too. Nisa said, oh, preggers. I'm like, and Sharon's like, no, I knew immediately it was June. I'm like, okay, well, pin a rose on your nose. I thought I knew it too until I saw her silhouette. And then all of a sudden, I'm impatient, okay? My brain jumps at things before it wait, no, I thought it was June. It looks like great. Oh, it is June. That's where my mind went. I made a mental note to kind of note, just like the Sarah thing, where I thought Paige was Sarah. It's like, oh, make a mental note that was my first jump instinct reaction. This was another one of those things where when I saw it at first, I was like, Grace? And then it's June. It's June. Yeah, and yeah, Sharon, I noted that too. The hawks that were in the Althea's episode, Alaska, yeah, the same hawks that I relegated to being the helicopters are in the same opening sequence as June's in this episode called Bury Her Next to Jasper's leg.
I thought you were referring to the school mascot on World Beyond. Those hawks.
Same.
I mean, that too, though. Yeah.
Which is the same cross-reference.
Well, I don't know that I liked it, but I heard June say a line to Ginny that we heard. Was it last episode? Yeah, in Honey. June says to Ginny,
"You make it so hard.
Why do you always make this so hard?"
Yeah. I thought that was really cool.
It obviously took me right back to Sherry and Dwight, right? Sherry says this to Dwight. So then I'm thinking, okay, how does their relationship or what they're going through right now compare to what June and Ginny are going through right now in this moment? You know, like, what role is Dwight playing? He is trying to save Sherry in this moment, you know, and Sherry's, you know, why are you making this so hard? And so I wanted to kind of feel the same. I wanted to believe that Ginny really was doing what she was doing to help people. And so I thought maybe they put that line there as a way to maybe make it easier to believe what Ginny's saying, because we heard it from Dwight and now we know we can trust Dwight. So I don't know.
Well, that's interesting. So, which means what though? Well, maybe we can trust Ginny?
Well, no, not totally trust her. I guess I just want
Sorry, I'm just talking shit.
Right. No, not totally trust her. Just believe her when she says, I really am trying to help people. Right. I think she really is trying to help people. She's just doing it in a really shitty way.
That's kind of like the point I was going to, even though I kind of was a jerk about making this point, but to be honest, this goes to something I said in The Walking Dead World Beyond. I'm not sure if I said it in Fear the Walking Dead, but essentially in the apocalypse, what's our first lesson? Don't trust people right away, right? But essentially, intrinsically, as human beings, that goes against our nature. Our nature, well, okay, our lizard brain, once we are always fearful, we always mistrustful, right? But what evolved in human beings, so one of the big things that evolved in human beings, eventually, because that won out, you know, according to evolution, I think with most people, some people know, but most people had to beat the Neanderthals because we had to evolve a sense of community and forgiveness. And so part of what people intrinsically want to do is believe people or believe in people. So like, even though we mistrust them as part of our evolution, you could see June struggling with the fact is I want to believe you.
Yeah.
Throughout this episode, I noted the fact that it is actually definitely the case that at the beginning of this episode, June is running around in circles with Sarah, trying to help people that would be impossible to help, which was Ginny's plan, which is by design. Right? Okay. Well, as we go throughout this episode, June quickly figures out which way is up. She knows Ginny is trying to pull the wool over her eyes. She is seeing it in real time as she goes along, trying to help people that Ginny is saying basically, sometimes you got to know which dogs to put down to pasture, right? So that sort of thing. She gets it. And so I see her, and I wrote this down, and I want you to hear this from my mouth. So it's always been about Dakota. Like, this is after her hand gets cut off, like, you know, but she sees that June has the upper hand, Ginny, and will take care of Dakota, right? Resigns herself to death. This is what I felt at the time.
Sure.
Says, oh God, you have no idea what it's like to care about somebody and not be able to help them. So June's like thinking, fuck you. Because John, the people that are hurt, like Malcolm and all these people in Tanktown, Sarah and Wendell, you know, how do you help Sarah when you don't know where Wendell is? Which eventually is one of those things that she tries to get from Ginny and succeeds. Anything she wants, whatever June wants, June gets. Anyway, so June in that moment understands Virginia completely and is able to hack off Ginny's hand because it's about more than just revenge. And in that, she is smarter than Rick and Negan combined. She's definitely quicker thinking than John and Morgan combined. Because John, like what I said about Morgan in the last episode, it took him forever to come around and realize we have to adapt. June adapts in that moment. And she says, there's got to be something for after. I can have both of these things. I can have a purpose and work within the system. She decides to work within the system, knowing which way is up, knowing that Ginny is not to be taken at her word, let's say, necessarily. But as long as I have the goods on her, I can work within the system. John didn't know that Ginny was not an honest broker. That's the difference between June and John in these moments. June does know that Ginny is a dishonest broker, and she is not a reliable witness, let's say, or not a reliable broker. So she can work within the system because now she understands what the core ethos is. Whereas John does not know which way is up. He does not know what his purpose is. At the beginning, June and John both think that what they're doing is trying to help people, while Ginny is just basically trying to spin everybody's wheels all around the communities to get them to make everybody else feel safe while she's making Dakota actually safe. in that respect. So that there's something going on here. I think, and John simply can't break out of it. John cannot handle the fact that the wool has been pulled over his eyes. He does not know which way is up, which means he has to leave. He needs to leave to be able to get perspective. We all need this eventually sometimes when we're in a bad situation. You know, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult to really work within the system for some people. And some people like me, when you're too stubborn, and this is me, I found myself doing this a lot of times. Sometimes it's hard for me to break away from a situation to be able to see which way is up and down. And I will work within the system. It is the harder way to go. And you will walk out with battle scars. But by the end of the day, you know, okay, maybe I will have learned the lesson, you know, but you can go through all of that without being in the blast radius, you know, and that's what John is trying to do in that moment. He's like, I don't know which way is up, but I need to step away from a situation to figure that out. June does not need that. June, this is why I'm impressed. This is why I'm kind of excited to see where this goes, because June gets it and gets it hard and fast. You know, she does not make things difficult. Yeah. You know, she doesn't make things hard. I said this about her last year too. I said, and I remember this exactly, it was like, it seems like June in some ways is kind of like a better Carol, not willing to Otis people, but still jumping over things with her Winchester, kicking some ass.
Anyway.
Woo! Yeah, well, but almost, right? In this episode, in a way? Like, you know, a half-assed...
almost Otis Ginny's ass, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I thought there was a kind of a moment, and I took this little blip as maybe one more reason to either, I don't know, sympathize or start to believe a little bit of what Ginny says. So June is helping the woman who's Marianne, right? And this is the one that Ginny says, just leave her. She doesn't know anything. Sometimes you need to know when to put a dog out to pasture, whatever she said. So, and June's like, no, screw that. We're going to save her. Put her on the bus. And then when they make their way back out to the truck and they open the door, who's the very first walker they see? Is Marianne.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Walker they see. And my first thought was, oh shit, Ginny was right.
Yeah.
Ginny was right.
Well,
don't put her on there. Granted, a lot of people turned. A lot of people on there turned. It probably would have happened with or without Marianne. But right. I just thought she's the first face they show us. And she's who Ginny was talking about not to put on the truck. So
yeah.
Thought, there's one for Ginny.
Well, you know what? There's another one and there is indications of foreshadowing on this one too, because without Sarah, when she wasn't there at the time, Malcolm would have gotten June killed in the beginning.
Yeah.
And with Sarah not there, and maybe as Ginny is a representation or a crude representation of Sarah saying, hey, maybe you should get off of her, let's say, her being Malcolm in a way, you know, and then, yeah, there is a little bit of absent-mindedness. Like, you know, I'm so busy trying to help people that I don't realize that if I keep them in the same spot, one could turn and kill everybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and
which is why
none of them can walk, which we know from being outside. None of them can walk, and that's why they're in there. So if somebody did turn, they're not hopping up to run away from them. So which one was strapped to the gurney and could not walk, and then, you know, made a perfect walker or cadaver buffet.
Yeah. Well, that actually brings up an interesting subject, because when June is in there and Ginny says, you know, in that whatever, the broken down shack after the explosion, you know, and Ginny says, you don't know what it's like to help people that you can't help, that sort of thing. And she's thinking of these people that Ginny was basically trying to question instead of help. In that moment, June having seen all those Tanktown workers rise up from the dead and eat each other. So what you're saying is basically like maybe she's even a little bit mad at herself, you know, for being responsible for that in some way. She puts it on Ginny, but I think maybe she is mad at herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Ginny said, don't do it. And she did anyway. Ooh,
and maybe she's mad at herself for other things too. Maybe she's mad at herself for thinking she could help people initially and keeps trying over and over, just like John, trying over and over again to help people that would be impossible to help, which is Ginny's design, to break her spirit. But that's the thing. June gets it, sees through it, moves past it. John can't. It's hard for him. He can't move past the betrayal long enough. This is why I like to illustrate the differences between these two. Even though they're different, and they can be different, that's fine. And they can still be good for each other. That's also fine. But yeah, there is a distinct difference between John and June in that respect. Sometimes you need the baggage, you know? Even though we like John as a better Rick, and I mentioned this in another episode, there's something to be said about, you know, maybe sometimes you need the baggage, because the baggage helps you know which way is up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can give you perspective.
Anissa is hopping on the hate train. by saying, June, the wind, get in. Ginny is saying this to June, to save her life. And yes, Ginny saved her life. Okay. I'm like, okay, Lisa, we're going to be in this bubble alone. in the Ginny might not be that bad bubble. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it all, but because you're right. Like the one thing that we do know is that we don't know what's going to happen next, which is great because as much as we do see Ginny and June nod to each other as Ginny is driving away, there is this mutual understanding, blah, blah, blah. With everything that we don't know, we do not know what's coming next. And that makes me really excited. Just like with John going off on his own, it makes me really excited for story because John moving off on his own and branching off in a different direction. First of all, like, it's not like it's not the same way as we saw Althea and Dwight off on their own, suddenly appearing somewhere else. No, we've seen where John's been, and now we know he's off going somewhere else. There is a sense of continuity. We saw him one place before, now we're seeing him possibly somewhere else. There's a journey. We like seeing journeys. We don't like seeing people suddenly pop into existence somewhere else. So we're following. Which is different. Like in a sense, John could be the new Morgan Tether, let's say, in some ways. Maybe John is the Tether moving to new episodes. Maybe it's June. Maybe there's a big time jump. What if there's a big time jump from here and things have changed? And I just want to remind people and be the bearer of bad news. Please don't hate me. But the next episode is going to be the last one for a little while because that's the 7th episode. Mm-hmm. And whatever happens in that next episode, I'm not going to say it's big. We don't know. This is just the way things shook out, okay? People don't yell at me, but that's sorry. But I'm hoping that it's a blowout. I'm hoping it's a big time jump. At least we get some sort of meat. Like we're the one big critique and the only critique is that in some senses, as great as the season has been, some critics and fans have been saying this is basically the best Fear the Walking Dead season ever. The one critique has been, and it's been yours actually, Rachel, is that, well, I don't know if I like these anthology episodes because I feel like in some senses we're not getting anywhere. A big time jump may illustrate a sense of movement and progress that will allow us to kind of piece the things that have happened in that interim with what we've seen in the next episode. So I think that could be really cool too. So there's a lot of things to get excited about if, fingers crossed, because we didn't get a look ahead in this episode. We're going to maybe get it tonight in the public watch, or maybe not. What if they didn't do it? What if they just surprised us completely for the next episode? Not like them, but like I would support this move because I really, in some senses, I kind of don't want to know what happens next because it's wild to not know, right?
Yeah.
I know. I am such an asshole right now. You're so broken right now, and I'm like so giddy. And you're like, hey, how can I be kidding? So many people got their hearts broken today.
I'm just over here trying to stay dry.
Not like Luciana and I was gonna say Naomi. Oh my god, Luciana and June in this episode. How do you think we met? Did you get that reference?
Yeah. That whole thing. Okay, to be totally honest, I went to the episode where we meet June, but that's between her and Madison. So I didn't really make that. So
Lucy and June met when Madison and Alicia, and I think it was Lucy, ran into town to try to find Charlie's parents. That whole side quest. They ventured beyond the range of where they usually go, outside the radius a little bit.
Okay.
And then they meet up, at least they meet up with Naomi at the time, and they follow her up the silo because they noticed that there was like a lot of walker guiding instruments, like sounds and stuff like that to make the walkers go up the stairs and fall into the silos and be trapped there so they could put numbers and stuff. One of the people that tumbled in was obviously Naomi at the time, and I think Madison, where we got the Madison foreshadowing about her possibly dying. I think June was the one, as Charity's saying, basically Luciana had a gun on her basically at the time.
Okay. I was trying to think of the last time I saw like oil raining down. I thought that's what they were making reference to, and I'm like,
no, it was falling into the silo with all the sludge, the oil sludge.
Okay,
walkers.
Right.
Yeah,
that's why I didn't make the connection. I was thinking, when when Ginny and all the Rangers show up and that catastrophe. That's what I was picturing. So she was referring to the first time they met under inauspicious circumstances, as Strad would say. Did we meet a Doc Holt?
No, I don't remember meeting a Doc Holt.
Okay, because Malcolm asks for Doc Holt, and I put a question mark next to that. Who's Doc Holt? He's the one who took Grace? Whoa, I hope he's not dead.
If we remember from season 5, Doc Holt was the one who was with Grace. There was a reference to Doc Holt at the end of at the last episode of season 5. They take Grace, apparently we find this out over the walkie. Ginny chimes in, oh, she's with the Dr. Holt or something like that, Doc Holt. Oh, turns out she's pregnant. That's why she's been acting all weird, blah, 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 that whole thing. So that's what Sharon D says, basically. He's the one who took Grace.
Okay. Yeah, I hope he's not dead. They're going to need somebody to deliver that baby. Could be telling everyone
Oh, that's interesting, too. Sharon D saying they could be telling everyone that he's dead, Doc Holt is dead, and he and Grace are just in hiding. That could be, which is very selfish, like instead of helping people, like Malcolm.
He's a doctor.
Well, it's kind of like I was saying, like the whole thing about Grace is that like, oh, no. Virginia has given Grace the immunity idol because babies. What's interesting is that one of the voices basically was talking about babies too, though. It's funny. The baby, like here, one of the voices says the baby's been crying all night. She's not breathing. We need a tetanus booster. How long before things turn? Do you have any insulin? It's like, yeah, there are babies elsewhere because most of the people that they're trying to help are elsewhere. They're not Ginny's people.
I think Sharon D saying June is taking the place of Doc Holt. She's running around trying to save people, but the Morgan comment, they could be...
so Grace, so they're hiding Grace away, Doc Holt, because to hide away from Morgan, right?
Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Grace isn't hiding from Morgan. Ginny has her tucked away so that... Okay, all right, it clicked. It finally clicked. Okay.
Captain's log. We put the Sharon D translator online, and it's called Nisa. No, it's fine.
I get it.
Listen, everything has a silver lining, and we get to have a little funny. It's fine. Yeah. So one of the things I actually wanted to say was something Sarah says at the end, at the back of the medical truck to June about her bad booze. Like, first of all, it recurs 3 times.
Which comes, thank you. It comes back so many times through this episode.
Just like it tries to come up on people throughout this episode. Now, one of the things that, besides it being funny, Sarah says something very interesting about the booze, about something that Wendell says, and it's, as long as it gets us to the same place at the end, that's all that really matters. And I thought that was a very unassumingly profound statement, and is the key to understanding the entire episode. As long as it gets you to the same place at the end, it doesn't matter how you get there. Yeah. Part of the reason why June is willing to go this route, even though it's a bit complicated and fraught, is that it ultimately gets her what she wants, even if it means dealing with people she would not normally deal with.
Even if it's something hard to swallow.
Exactly. Egg, I'm pulling down the heavens, exactly. Because this is something that I said in the very beginning of this season. One of the possible outcomes might end up being that instead of fighting against Ginny, toppling her dying, in essence, and them winning, and then doing things on their terms, one of the outcomes might end up being that they find a way to move forward together. Now, that doesn't mean under Ginny's boot, and that doesn't mean necessarily under the gang's boot. It just means that they may find a way to live with each other, to move forward, to create the kind of future that Ginny kind of wants, that's not under her terms, let's say, necessarily, or maybe under her terms, but she's a fairer person. It could be any one of these things, but it may not turn out the way we think it will. And yes, it's exactly the way June is saying. We have to make the loss of life count for something. And what do they say on The Walking Dead World Beyond? Huck says this specifically. We have to make the bad thing we've done, or that they've done, count for something, right? Yeah. It can't just be about killing. It can't just be about doing the bad. And this is why I say June gets it right away. June understands it. She's so much faster than everybody else. This is what makes me hopeful, though. That's the thing. And now, yes, it's not going to be without outside forces trying to mess that thought up. But that's a whole other story. Once we know, like, what was it G.I. Joe says? Knowing is half the battle, right? Knowing is half the battle. Now we know what to deal with. And just like secrets in the apocalypse with their PTSD and bullshit, like, the thing about it is, when you know the truth, you know what you're working with. When you know what's what, which way is up, you know what you're working with. Keeping secrets is only going to harm people, Ginny. Keeping things to yourself is only going to harm people. Now, I know I understand completely completely in a way, I understand because of the Walking Dead World Beyond. I understand that perspective of keeping as little information public as possible that is helpful for most people. But when you operate on certain facts and don't have all of them, it makes it very hard to move forward. And again, this is the connection. This is the connection between this series, Fear the Walking Dead, and the Walking Dead World Beyond. You know, operating on the same facts, PTSD, trauma. You know, how do we move forward? My way is the only way. You know, or do we adapt? You know, Sherry, even remember her promo, this is the only way. The past is dead. It's funny, like when we saw the promos, I'm like, I don't know what they're saying. I don't understand a thing of this. Like, what is the past is dead? What is this is the only way? Daniel in his promo was like, I don't know who you want me to be or like who you think I am. People think they know who I am. That sort of thing. And like, what is going on here? I don't understand. Now it's starting to make sense. I know I'm beaten up from the feet up too, but I'm the kind of person when I get beat up, I get up again because I'm very stubborn. I'm very, very stubborn.
I mean,
I refuse to
can't
stay
wait
down.
To see, yeah, I can't wait to see where the rest of the season takes us. I mean, I am just so glad that this wasn't the finale. I mean, could you imagine if this is how the season ended?
First of all, cliffhanger.
I'd be crying for 6 months.
I think you'd start feeling like beat down.
Oh my gosh!
Like why? Why, if you're the Walking Dead, you're like holding yourself?
Why do you do this?
Why would you
to
do
me?
It's like, yeah. I don't know. The feeling is akin to what Owens says on The Walking Dead World Beyond. Oh, it's like a pathogen from space. It gets into your stomach and turns it, and then you breathe it on other people, and then you turn them. Yeah. Yeah, my stomach hurts just thinking about this episode, but at the same time, like, I feel excited. The best thing about this season has been, after every single episode, by the end of it, as hard as a watch as it sometimes is, even Strand, even Dwight, oh God, especially Dwight, Althea, watching her pull back, not knowing if her thing with Isabel is even possible, because we know what the future holds. Even still, the end of the episode, I'm thinking, oh my God, they can go anywhere with this. They're leaving off on such a note that they can go anywhere. It's definitely not going to go out the way we think it's going to go, but at the same time, that's half the excitement.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I mean, I didn't pick up on it on my first watch, but my second watch, I definitely saw the foreshadowing during the conversation that June and John are having in the car, and she's telling John that she lost Malcolm. You know, I told him that everything would be okay, and I lost him anyway. And then, right after having watched it the first time, I immediately pictured John and June at the end of the episode, and she's telling him, you know, things change. It's not as bad as we thought. And then she loses him anyway.
Yeah.
That's
why I made that face earlier. I'm like, you're right.
Conversation.
You're right. I didn't see that. Oh my God, I didn't see it. Now my stomach hurts even more. What did, oh my God, I'm thinking of the wrong show. My God. Okay, but I might as well bring it up now. I've been watching Bly Manor, like the Haunting of Bly Manor.
I finished that one. Yeah, I finished it.
Okay, so I'm trying to take it slow, but it's hard not to when you want to binge every episode.
You need to binge it because it doesn't get good till the last episode.
But it's worth mentioning because, like, what Flora says repeatedly throughout the show, just because they're not here doesn't mean they're gone. That's which is why my brain just had this weird moment, like, but who said that on this show? Nobody said that on this show.
Other show, yeah.
But
Madison does say no one's gone till they're gone.
Oh,
yep. Sharon D brings that back. Mm-hmm.
Sharon D, that is the perfect thing to say during this moment.
Yep.
See, you saved us. You saved yourself, just like John is going to. John needs to save himself, and Sharon D, you just saved yourself.
He'll come back. We'll see John and June happy again together. I hope.
They will. They'll find a way. They will. But here's the thing, and I think this is very important to remember. Just like you said, maybe Sharon D said this, they gave us John and June reunion early to make us feel kind of good, then they jerked it out from under us. But in a sense, they never really gave us a reunion, which is interesting because the very fact that they recognized this early on means that, okay, no, we need a double we need to do this again. We need a do-over, which is what they, again, will hopefully get. They will hopefully get, you know, this is the reunion. John needs to be able to come back to the table as somebody different. From the very first time we meet him, there is a sense of mastery of some kind, but John hasn't gone through the evolution that everybody else on the show more or less has 2 times over. You know, Morgan 16 different times. But still, John is the only one who hasn't really done that. Charlie has done it, Strand has done it, Althea in some respects has done it, even from season 4 has stepped into the story a little bit. June has done it several times over, and each time is a better her. Lucy in some respects. Like, look, remember what Lucy was under, always trying to do the community's rules, trying to go with the flow and never really stepping into her own. She put her life on the line to save everybody else, to help refine the fuel in Tanktown. She really sacrificed herself. She knows what that is to the max. Now, in my little quiet time, just before I came on, this is the one thing I meditated on a little bit more, and that I'm a little upset about. And I'm hoping, like, with all our being worried about John and June, part of the thing that I was thinking about in my quiet time was, what about Lucy? She really hasn't gotten, let alone an evolution. How can you have an evolution when you don't really know where a character sort of stands? I was always a little bit upset about her treatment as a character on the show. Do you know what I mean? And I'm a little concerned, because you can't really kill a character like that, because you have to basically build up that character to be able to feel something for when she does go. So if I was a writer, I wouldn't know what to do with her either, now that she's here, right? Yeah. Do you kill her off screen? Like, how, or do you at all? Or do you build her up to be the very thing that saves everybody? That would be the only way to make her character mean something. In much of the same way, like, even Charlie has a bigger, evolution than she does, which in a way makes me upset. And I feel like we have to acknowledge it as a show in a way. I'm not saying I hate the writers, I'm going to quit the show or whatever. I'm just saying this is one of those things that has to sort of get some sort of treatment, some sort of development. I mean, when the rabbi has more lines than you, it's like...
I completely agree with that. Lucy's, she's just kind of one of those characters like, what are you doing? What's your role here?
Who are
what is
you?
your role here? Yeah. And maybe the writers don't even know. I mean, maybe they had a direction for her. She served her purpose, which I don't even
know it was, right?
To save everyone at Tanktown.
To stay behind, yeah. Which that's not a bad thing, but like now
had a role.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to give people a reason to care about somebody leaving. And something that's on paper, she sacrificed herself to refine the fuel, triple the production as she mentioned on the show. But, we have to build that character up. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest writing challenges ever. Like, how do you make a person so... And will they make a Luciana-focused episode, which they should. I really hope they do. And I hope the next one is that, by the way. I really think she deserves it now. I want it now. Even though I don't know what the next one is. I don't remember.
How affected would you be if Luciana were killed off the show? I mean...
It's hard.
I don't...
You're reading what Charity says?
No.
She says, I would sacrifice Luciana 1,000 times to have a happy John and June.
Well, I'm just thinking if the writers do ultimately decide to kill Lucy off, it would have to be on screen. I think just because the way they've developed the character, or lack of development rather, in order for it to have an impact on the viewers, we'd have to watch her die. I mean, or like brutally. You said, give us a Lucy episode. Like, give us something to mourn when she actually does die. If they're planning on killing her off later. But right now, I don't feel super connected to that character. Like, we don't see her a lot. She's just sort of in the background, kind of. And you're right. I completely agree. That's not fair. Like, Lucy should have a bigger role. Yeah.
I mean, especially since she is sort of like an OG,
Yeah. She's been around a lot longer than some of these characters. Mm-hmm.
So, in that respect, rather than complain about it, it's a good thing to shine a flashlight on it. Fine. Let's take a step back and say, well, this also, in some respects, as we are seeing this episode unfold and realizing in what ways it can go, in all the places that we don't know where it can go, Luciana is the same way. She does have, in some respects, a tabula rasa to be able to develop a character that is completely different than what we know. With some hints, as is common with everybody else, hints to her past that have long been unacknowledged, let's say, like Colonia and Nick and all these other things moving forward, too. Like her hate of Charlie and maybe reconnecting in some way with that hate, or, a reversal of that hate and maybe a further connection with the Little Prince stuff. Things like that, where we can touch on certain things and how that affects her as a character moving forward. So, but Sharon's saying, as far as I can tell, it's Alicia, Strand, Charlie, and John. In the next episode, you're saying?
In the next episode?
Okay, yeah, that's what she's saying.
Okay.
And I think it's an Alicia-focused episode, essentially.
So maybe John doesn't make it all the way back to his cabin?
I would have to bet that he doesn't. And something stops him along the way. Because if he made it to his cabin, it's like, oh, okay, well, what now? What do we do with this character?
Well, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if Morgan maybe caught up with him and was like, "Hey, forget the cabin. I got a much better place."
That's a good point too. Like Morgan has not seen. John doesn't know Morgan is alive. Mm-hmm. Oh, that could change everything. That's Nisa mentioned something about the Demon Walkers, or I think it was Sharon Day. I can't remember who. I know, no, but I wanted to talk about that. We have not seen them yet. Those Demon Walkers that I mentioned in the previous 2 episodes ago. And I wonder if it's the end is the beginning guys that kind of unleash these walkers. How they became walkers, I do not know. But did you finally get to see a look at them from one of our episodes that I put in post?
I still have it.
Oh,
I want to watch it I want to watch it in real time.
I don't
want to
blame
watch
you.
it for real.
Yeah. I feel like we've seen almost all the stuff that we saw in the trailer and the look ahead.
I'd have to watch it again.
Oh, there is that one thing.
So much in my head.
There is that one thing of Alicia being on at the lookout tower with Charlie. So, okay, let's say what Sharon says.
If you zoom in on the truck in the overhead shot, it looks like John and Strand are in the back of it. I do remember that scene that we broke down in the trailer, and it looked like John was like in the bed of the truck
with his shotgun or his rifle pointing. Yeah. Okay, so let me give everybody the picture of the truck. The truck is the overhead shot on a bridge. There's a barricade and a truck moving forward, busting through the barricade, if I remember right. And there's somebody walking around the side of it or something, or there's definitely somebody on the flatbed, which is John. And I think there's another somebody, and Sharon is saying basically it's probably Strand because his hat is noticeable.
And now we know what Strand's hat looks like, his ranger hat.
Yeah, which is why we can say it's Strand now. Yeah, so interesting.
That's strange. That's really strange, isn't it? I mean, John's trying to get away from Ginny and her affiliations, and here he is with Strand.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you know, it's good that it comes back around, because I think Strand is not good without a Dory, and Dory is definitely not good without Strand. This is evident from when they were together, and one was pulling one out from the gloom. So John was basically trying his best to get Strand to look up, and buck up a little bit so that they can save each other. And by the end of it, Strand is actually pulling John up. When Strand starts to realize things are possible, John is still very depressed. He's losing hope and stuff like that. And it's this weird relationship that we got to see in season 4 when they're trapped behind the flooded waters at the ranger station. And oddly enough, it was a ranger station too, if I remember right now. Like a wildlife ranger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just remember them alligators.
yeah, whatever that was. And Charity's saying it looks like the bridge from Laura. Yeah, could very well be not the bridge, but at least they're reusing some overhead scenes or whatever, some actual scene locations, filming sites.
If John
if it is, that would be cool.
Be cool. If John does make it to the cabin and that's kind of where he's staying and hiding out, I hope he does not tell Strand where it is, because I would not trust Strand at all. Not tell Ginny.
Right. But it looks like from the trailer, it looks like Strand is helping him, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, it's possible that Strand could make wise choices. I'm just saying I wouldn't trust him with information that he did not need.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah. Does John think he can? If he doesn't know which way is up, he wouldn't, I don't think. Yeah. Charity is saying essentially is that
Rabbi will eventually give June
John's letter. Not knowing that June was on her way to meet him anyway. And so eventually, and this is basically his last words before he was going to face off with Ginny, and then eventually gets disrupted by Strand. And so when Rabbi gives June that letter, June will tell Strand to go after John because she knows where John is. There we go. Which might explain that scene. Right.
And it's like Strand has more freedom to roam from settlement to settlement. So it wouldn't be unusual for him to be out and about. Whereas it might be weird for June if she were.
Yeah, another thing that's out in the wind right now is Althea and Dwight planting their walker bodies so that they can actually move about in the world as well. So everybody in their own respect is able to, and join Morgan, obviously, in the promised land. And this is why I say I'm very excited. And you guys should be too. Because each person in their own way is freeing themselves from Ginny's grip. And June happens to be someone who finds her way out of Ginny's grip within Ginny's domicile, let's say. It seems to be almost the only one, except for Strand. Strand is out and about, but still, there's not as much hold on Strand. He can go intersite. Everybody seems to be able to be finding their way out, right? And so it's kind of interesting to see this all come about. And then in that freedom, they may be able to make better choices about how they want to proceed with Ginny, let's say. That's the thing I find out interesting about Morgan. Even Morgan is not willing to kill Ginny outright because he's learned the lessons of All Out War. He knows that it can't just be about killing. There's got to be something for after. And we may need Ginny for something. And Morgan is finding intimately out what that might be because of the 2 people he had to kill on the road. Or he felt like he had to kill. Sharon D with the tie into the Walking Dead world beyond, and Elton's reaction to drinking liquor for the first time. I wonder if Sarah's liquor tastes like a warm sack of nails. I bet it tastes worse.
Everybody said it tasted awful. I love the look on her face though when Malcolm says, "Oh, it's terrible," and she's like, "I'm trying.
I'm working on it." Like, you've been working on it for 3 seasons, okay?
She was so offended.
It's like, you should not work on liquor when you can't even get beer right, you know? It's like, come on. Do you need Hope's advice to how to distill? Yeah, okay. And so Shandy's saying, I was going to say I'd like Al and Dwight to meet John instead of Strand. Okay.
I would like to bring up 3 nicknames that Sarah gives to Ginny this episode. First thing she calls her is Freckles.
Yeah, I thought that was cute.
To ask Freckles for a hospital. Then she's talking to Lucy and she calls her VA.
Yeah, I like that too.
But my favorite nickname is Captain Hook.
What, too soon? That was better. That squared the circle there. But that's what makes what June says really crazy, because you start off with the joke, and then June almost has the punchline of like, yes, we can get her hospital. Wait, hold on. I was joking about, and now you want to be with her, you think you can work within the system. And that's what's so jarring, is you get this joke and then you get this June saying something what is ostensibly crazy to them.
Well, Ginny really is looking to the future, then people would be a part of that. It's got to truly want to save a certain amount of people for any hope at a future. So maybe she just wants the people that she wants to allow into her community. I can't say I don't blame her.
Oh, what are you saying? No, you're right. I mean, no.
For years, I want to move to an island. I have the people that I love and care about on that island, so I don't have to deal with the rest of the world's stupidity.
So what you're trying to say is, hold on a second. What you're trying to say is you completely understand Strand when he gets to decide who gets to join him on Penny's boat. Like that sort of thing. Oh, man. Now you're going to hate me now. I can't.
I'm going to admit that I do.
Oh, boy.
Here's the difference. I wouldn't kill someone if they wanted to join my community, and I said no.
You mean Otis someone?
I would. Yeah, I'm not going to Otis anybody. No.
Oh,
it's going to be Walking Dead Island, and all of my Walking Dead family will be allowed, and my real family will be allowed, and my closest friends will be allowed. That's it. That's my island.
No one else. We trust nobody else. I am Ginny to its worst extreme. No, I'm kidding. Well, we learned a lot about each other in this one episode, I think.
So you calling me out? On understanding, I can't believe those words came out of my face.
Yeah,
and yes, you're in my island. You're in my family. We're family.
Yeah, everybody else, no. I'm working on trying to rub Rachel the wrong way, so I get kicked out of the community.
You'll be on exile.
Yeah, I'll be Ginny's outcast wearing a mannequin mask. I'll be Rachel's outcasts. But Charity brought up a very good point, and yeah, I mean, it does affect us, like she wants to thank everybody who asked if she was okay today,
I gotta tell you how scared I was when I read that post. I woke up this morning, the first thing I saw was a post from Charity, and it was June's title card, right? And it just said, thanks everybody for, checking on me or asking me if I'm okay today. And I went, oh shit.
Which is kind of a spoiler. Like, oh my God, June died. Because you hadn't seen the episode yet.
I did not seen the episode yet. My gut reaction was somebody died. I didn't know who. But I figured somebody died.
Right. Somebody gonna get a hurt real bad.
I was thinking it could have been John, because I read through the comments and Sharon said, I'm okay now. And I thought if it was June, she would not be okay now.
But I see, maybe it's not about June anymore. So now we're drilling further into Sharon D's psyche, Blazy Gardner. It's not about June per se. It's the idea of June and John being together that's the worst. That's what will get her. If one of them, the idea of them being apart, that's the thing that will get her in the end. Yeah. It's not about a single person. It's about these two people being together. Yeah. They are my anchor.
I only wish these two could have been around from season 1. It's my only regret.
Well, they needed to be like a season 4 thing, right? If you think about it, the world wasn't ready or didn't care about that until season 4.
I know.
In a weird way, right? Like, can you imagine them being in the beginning?
It wouldn't have worked out the same. No, I know that. I'm just selfish and want treats too. So.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine how much our stomachs would be hurting across many seasons, like 6 seasons, if they were there from the beginning? Like, how many times we thought they would have bit it, that sort of thing? Oh, God, I couldn't handle it. Which is interesting why they got rid of Travis so, not quickly, but like in the 3rd season, you know?
I thought for sure Travis around. I thought he was going to make it.
Right. But in a way, it really freed them up from having to, like, even though they split up a lot physically, you know, in throughout the series, like they went different ways only to come back, and the kids went different ways and only to come back. Having that permanent separation frees up characters to do interesting things. So, which I'm not willing to say about John and June, but what I'm saying is that, yeah, if they had been around from the beginning, our stomachs would, God, it would hurt for 6 seasons, you know, always thinking there's something in this Walking Dead universe which we always think splits up couples because they can never be happy. We're always waiting for the shoe to drop, and we all, you know, and there were parts throughout the seasons where we thought we'd lose them, you know, and I couldn't handle that for 6 seasons, but I can handle that for 3 or 4.
I think it says a lot to the writers and producers and the people who make the show that John and June can affect us so hard after only having been with them for 2 seasons, right?
Yeah, we're weird. Yeah, I mean, they're great, and we're weird too.
It took me 7 years of knowing Glenn to get to this point, and now here I am crying just as hard over a couple that I've only known for 2 years.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is qualified the Glenn statement is that you weren't really a big fan of his, or
no. Right from day one, him and Carol were number 1 for me.
Okay, and it leads to a certain point that they die, and then it's just devastating.
Also, it should be mentioned that although I read the comics now, I didn't actually start reading the comics until the end of season 7. So I hadn't read the comics for the first 7 seasons of The Walking Dead. So I really didn't know what to expect during all of that.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah.
You know, something interesting is that Nisa says we needed to go through Madison and Travis to get John and June. That is a really good point. We needed to see, something end for something else to rise up from those ashes. Something pure to rise up from something that wasn't always, which is fine. You know, that's what we liked about Fear the Walking Dead. It wasn't perfect. It was dysfunctional. The marriages were somewhat askew. The children were somewhat askew. You know, they weren't always in sync, but they somehow made it work. That was what was great. Parts of a whole, you know, fractions of the whole trying to create a whole, you know, remember like the Marine Corps, the body that I was saying before? Core means body.
Oh.
They're all different functions of the same body, and they may do different things and may act differently and weirdly, but working together, they make it work somehow.
It's funny that Nathan, pointing out Madison and Travis, because I barely think about Madison, but it's still there, like lodged in the back of my brain. I mean, that what happened between those two could definitely be giving me
affecting the way you view John and June's relationship.
Yes, thank you. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think about Madison, but she's still back here, and what her and Travis went through. Now seeing John and June go through all this, in the pit of my stomach, it's like don't die, right? Because we know it can happen. So even though I'm not thinking it outright, that's probably in the back of my mind.
Let's qualify that even further, though. What's interesting about Madison and Travis is that these are people that have been together for a lot longer than John and June. Well, part of the reason why we get so heartbroken about John and June is that they never really even got a chance to start. They had some togetherness, no marriage, no dealing with the different kids. But there is something about when you see something being snuffed out before he even has a chance to start or grow, something beautiful, something pure, like Sharon D says. We always get miffed when we see something that that's like a failure to launch. We want to see that thing grow at least for a little while, like Carl, that we could be okay with him leaving, but not like Nick. Nick is a different. I always like to compare those two deaths because Nick, in a sense, was almost like a failure to launch. Like there is something about he was just almost there. He's almost at a point to which he was finding some sort of balance, and he was taken away from us. Carl, on the other hand, there was a lot of zen with Carl, before he left, and we were okay with him leaving in a weird way, in some respects, even though it hurts and it's hard.
Speak for yourself.
No, but what I mean is when you see a character reach maybe the pinnacle of their development, like as far as they're going to go to reach, this is something that some of the critics like to remind us every once in a while, is that the reason why maybe Carl had to go was he found a way to be okay with what had happened to him, to feel like he was the monster, then move past it and forgive himself, and try to make good of the bad things he's done. And then you see that in Negan and him, and those blessings kind of get passed on to Negan in a way, where Carl essentially, you could say Rick ended all that war, but it was really Carl. The idea of Carl finding the balance ahead of Rick and Negan was what won all out war. And so the reason why I bring that up is because there's a lot of that interplay going on here, except June figures it out right away. I like that we don't have to lose people to lose yourself. You don't have to lose people to lose all out war, or to figure out what all out war meant. And it feels like those vibes are happening, but the all out war, it doesn't have to be between our gang and Ginny's people. Sometimes we have to band together to fight the Whispers, let's say. So Charity says, from the few episodes of Madison and Travis that I've seen, they seem like a strong couple. Yes, and then you'll eventually see, not a rift, but you'll see the differences in approach and opinions and paragons and the complicated relationship they have with themselves and each other, which is why I think eventually people either hate or love Madison because of how complicated she is and how uncomplicated Travis can be, or seem, too. Yeah, seem. Well, I mean, he's, even the seem part with Travis it's not nearly as confusing or complicated as Madison.
Yeah, Travis himself might not be so complicated. I guess I was thinking more like Chris.
Chris. Yes.
He's the complicated part of mine.
Right. It's funny. Like, there was an article that mentioned, or I think it was a Reddit article, is that this is the same way I feel about Shane, is that once we're in the rear view, we realize Shane wasn't all that, not bad. What I'm saying is Shane isn't all that hard to figure out, you know? No. It's a shame that he was ahead of his time, but it's a shame that he couldn't express himself to get others see his point of view. It's the same thing as Chris, though, in a way. I feel the same way about him in the rear view, is that there's something that he got that other people did not get, that the way you have to be. And it's unfortunate that he was a teenager, you know, when all that happened, which really gives me a very interesting perspective on kids of Walking Dead World Beyond. And how they're getting an education too, but it's not the school of hard knocks that Chris had to go through, this trauma of seeing his mom die, you know. It's rough, you know, and it's not the same. I wished
that Chris's mom stuck around longer than Madison. But I'm just a big fan of the actress, so.
Oh, yeah. Rodriguez, what's her name? Elizabeth Rodriguez? Yeah.
I can't think of the actress's name, but she was
on Orange is the New Black.
She was Leda.
Great. It's great.
I love that character. When I saw her on Fear, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna love this character, and then boom, I'm like, what?
And then I instantly hate her. She is such a bitch.
Oh, I loved her.
Okay.
Just because different character in mind, right? Like, do you do that? Like, when you recognize somebody as a different character and you love that character, you're gonna love this character no matter what they do, right? Because you have this different. You have this different role in your head. I do that a lot.
Matt Frewer.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
it. That's the influence. And just like, remember, and just like Scott Adsit from the last episode, like you had this baked in idea of how you wanted this person to live, if he is alive or not alive. That sucks.
And I try not to do that, but I just can't help it. And to be fair, I think there are some actors who get typecast, right? And so when you see actors in a certain role, it's like, okay, they generally take on this type of character, so I'm going to assume that this is the same, right?
Yeah, aka
when people play bad guys, yeah, and which sucks. But usually bad guys, they're going to play a bad guy across the board. Usually. But not all. Look at, John Lithgow. There's a good example. He's... you know, the guy next door. But when he plays bad roles, it is like extra scary. He's somebody that I wouldn't try to pin down what his character is in anything, because he's a wild card.
Yeah, even Colby. Colby's kind of like that too. She's played, you know, kind of finicky characters, but she's never really played an all-out bad character until just now. You know, as far as I can tell.
that's a good choice, to take someone that the viewers might see as a good guy and then turn them into a villain, because it's not what we're expecting. I like that. I love that. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is sort of like that, right? Like, he's always been Walking Dead for me. That I didn't know Jeffrey Dean Morgan before Walking Dead, but I have since gone back and watched Supernatural. And so most people would recognize JDM as John Winchester, right? Who's not a bad guy. He's a father and has kids and a family man. And so to see JDM play Negan, it's like, whoa, totally different role for him.
Yeah, for some people, yeah. And I guess he doesn't typically play dickheads.
But he's so good at it.
Except in Sliders, that's the first role I knew him as. Like, he played a bad guy in Sliders.
Oh,
I think the episode, I think, was called El Cid. But yeah, if you ever watch that episode, yeah, he's a shitheel. Leather jacket, the whole thing. It's like we predicted Negan all the way back then.
Actors do get pigeonholed like that. They do. He's a friend of the family, but I call him Uncle Matt. Matthew Glave. If you saw him in The Wedding Singer, like, unfortunately, this man, he always gets cast as like this dickish asshole. Like, so good at playing this role, which is hilarious because it is the complete opposite of his true personality. Like, he's probably one of the nicest, most sweetest people I've ever met in my life, but he plays this asshole role so well. And so when you see him in something, like, I know what character it's going to be. Like, he's going to be that cocky asshole because he does it well.
And some people just look like assholes, right? Like, I just saw like one of those kind of Hallmarky movies. It wasn't a Hallmark movie per se, but with the guy that played Ron Anderson, but he was playing a good guy, which really wrecked with my perceptions.
Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It like, you were like, whoa, right? And
yet he is the lead role in a I think it's a show. It is a show, right? Yeah. Is it like Lily, something Max and Lily or something like that? I can't remember his name. Is Dylan Lily? I can't remember exactly what it was. It was on Netflix. Yeah, he plays this protagonist. Like, and it's hard for me to break out of that idea of him being anything other than Ron Anderson. So hard, very difficult. Oh, and Nisa's perfect. Yeah, when I heard JDM was going to play Negan, I thought of course, it's the comedian. That's another perspective, you know? Yeah, so the comedian is a character from the Watchmen movie.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I have heard. Okay.
And he was maximum dickhead, so.
So, was he a bad guy in that movie? I haven't seen it.
The thing about the Watchmen is there's the cynic take on the superhero is that sometimes they're not all it's cracked up to be. They're just as messed up as we are. And yeah, and Nisa says top level asshole. Like, he was essentially what somebody would ostensibly say is a good guy, but if you really found out how bad he was, like, okay, napalm in Vietnam and hurting innocent people and raping somebody. I don't think they quite refer to it that way in the movie, but he essentially rapes another character and produces another character that we see years down the line, another superhero essentially. So yeah, very complicated character, but more or less, they call him the comedian because he makes jokes, and some of them are not good.
And I agree. Like, I'm definitely hopeful. I wasn't crying in this episode because I thought John and June would never see each other again, or like that's not where my tears were coming from. It was just heart-wrenching to watch him drive this way and them drive that way, and like, watching his face, like,
to say that he would follow but didn't, and just like June had said, and then as soon as we're done, we're gonna go together, we're gonna go to the cabin together, and then she doesn't do it, and just like John says, oh, I'll follow you, and he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Which also gives me hope also, because they're both doing the same things.
Do you think June was watching in the rearview mirror? I mean, she knew where that fork was. He said it to her right before they took off. Fork's 5 miles up. We can just go left. They can go right, or we'll go right. They'll go left. Do you think she was watching the mirror?
I don't think so. I'm fairly certain that I don't think so, because when you're, this from driving, right? Like, when you're behind a truck at a certain distance, the truck can't see you. And,
okay.
And I think she even said, right, follow us closely or something like that. Meaning,
yeah.
I think she said something like that.
I thought it was especially interesting that June rode with John to Tanktown, but then she got on the truck and left with Sarah, Wendell, and Lucy, I assume.
But she had to because she had to observe her patient.
Oh, okay. So she stayed with okay. Thank you. I was looking for some reason that she rode with them and not John. Okay, that makes sense. And she truly believed him, didn't she, Sharon? When he said, "I'll be right behind you," she believed him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think just like he believed her when she finally, because she didn't answer him immediately when he said we needed to go. We'll get some jerry cans and blah blah blah. She didn't answer him right away until she started seeing the devastation. She came back to him. She said, "Okay, we'll take the jerry. We'll go, and I'm going to take you and God, blah 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 blah." Yeah. So I don't know. It's very interesting. I kind of want to see a time jump. I want to see a time jump where the hospital is built.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. I assume they would find a structure already standing and then just move shit in, right? Or are you thinking they're going to structure building? I don't know. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think it's gonna be great to see how they do this. I do hope they get a hospital up and running. I think it's important for any community. Yeah. Oh, now Sharondy's turning against June. She's caught up in the hospital. She was oblivious to John. She's gonna start hating June. Oh no, okay, she's being factual. Okay, I got worried for a second. What do you want from me? Listen, I'm worried for you. I'm not worried, about you. I'm worried for you. You know what I'm saying? But you'll be okay. You're a person. Always Team June. That's always right. Team June. Okay, there you go. That's what I want to hear. But don't get some resentment. Don't get resentful. It's gonna come back around. I promise you. Man. What if I don't? What if I don't fulfill that promise? Okay, will you ever trust me again? I'll take it. I'll be the focus of your ire. That's half my job. Make you hate me. So this way you don't have to hate other people. So with that, everybody, thank you for joining us on this lovely journey. Lovely. You're absolutely splendid. I couldn't imagine a better day to spend with people than crying all day. Rate this podcast at ratethispodcast.com/squawkingdead. 5 stars in an eggplant. Tell us everything that we need to do. Helps us tremendously. But if you'd like to write us more, tell us what we're doing wrong, tell us what we're doing right, what you like about the show the most, please do so. It helps us a lot. And if you really, really enjoy what we're doing, head over to ko-fi.com, set up an account, and then follow us at coffee.com/squawkingdead. And if you really do like what we're doing, you're enjoying the early access to the unedited episodes, which you will get for free regardless of whether or not you follow us. But if you follow us, you'll know when they drop. Until November 22nd, which is just next week, you should be able to get early access to our unedited episodes for free as soon as this recording is done. And you'll be able to enjoy it from now instead of Thursday when we edit them down and then drop them on streaming platforms like YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Instagram, etc. If you really, really, really like us, you can buy us a coffee on ko-fi.com/squawkingdead. When you do, you'll get 30 days of access to our supporter-backed content, of which the main two things are you can join us in the chat and lend your opinions. Tell us immediately what you're liking about what you're saying. Your input will shape this show. So you'll be able to join us during these recording sessions, and you'll also be able to get a copy of the unedited episode recordings immediately through the same post. If you subscribe to a coffee, the party will just keep on rolling, and you'll be able to support a podcast that you love very much. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things that help us out moving forward. And I guess with that, thank you for joining us, and we'll be seeing you in the next Walking Dead World Beyond. Thank you so much. Enjoy yourselves. We'll see you in the next one, and really do hope you've liked what you've watched or listened to. Take care, everybody. Bye.